All right, open up to Numbers chapter 14. Numbers chapter 14. So we had left off on verse 26 and following, where God tells Moses that, essentially he's sick of the Israelites murmuring. And since they said they'd rather die in the wilderness than have to go into the promised land, he's going to grant that wish. And the 40 years of the wandering in the wilderness begins. So let's jump down to verse 39. And Moses told these words to all the sons of Israel, and the people mourned greatly. And they rose early in the morning and went up to the heights of the hill country, saying, "See, we are here. We will go up to the place which the Lord has promised, for we have sinned." So they say they don't want to go. Then Moses tells them, "No, you guys can't go." And then some of them are saying, "Well, let's go take a look." And yeah, we'll probably get this. Yes, ma'am.
So they have to wander for 40 years in the desert because of all of this. And you said that most of the generation will be killed off. So how come Moses lives through this, and then how come Joshua also lives through this? Because by deduction, Joshua would be he wouldn't be.
Caleb's also going to live through it. So Joshua and Caleb have the gift of longevity. So does Moses. So Moses will die before entering the promised land, but Joshua and Caleb are granted a long life that they enjoy because they did not sin. So they live past the wicked generation. Okay, so now at verse 4, they're saying, "Let's go and let's actually try to conquer it." Verse 21, but Moses said, "Why now are you transgressing the command of the Lord for that which will not succeed? Do not go up lest you be struck down before your enemies, for the Lord is not among you." So you get this clear connection between Israel's success in battle and God's presence with them. All right, Israel's success in battle and following God's covenant and his commands faithfully. Verse 4-3, "For there the Amalekites and the Canaanites are before you, and you shall fall by the sword, because you have turned back from following the Lord, and the Lord will not be with you." But they presumed to go up to the heights of the hill country, although neither the ark of the covenant of the Lord nor Moses departed out of the camp. Then the Amalekites and the Canaanites who dwelt in the hill country came down and defeated them and pushed them even to Hormah. So let's jump ahead to chapter 16. And chapter 16 details the story of the revolt of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. Korah is Aaron and Moses' first cousin. So he's a fellow Levite. And Dathan, according to a rabbinic tradition, so just like how we have Catholic commentaries on Scripture, there's been Jewish and rabbi commentaries on Scripture even going back to the BC era. So according to rabbinic traditions, Dathan was always a troublemaker and one of the chief complainers among the people, stirring up problems. Chapter 16, verse 1. Now Korah, the son of Izhar, son of Kohath, son of Levi, and Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the sons of Peleth, sons of Reuben, took men, and they rose up before Moses with the number of the sons of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, chosen from the assembly, well-known men. And they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron, and said to them, "You have gone too far, for all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves before the assembly of the Lord?" When Moses heard it, he fell on his face, and he said to Korah and all his company, "In the morning the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near to him whom he will choose, he will cause to come near to him. Do this. Take censers, Korah and all his company. Put fire in them and put incense upon them before the Lord tomorrow. And the man whom the Lord chooses shall be the Holy One. You have gone too far, sons of Levi." And Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you sons of Levi, is it too small a thing for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do service in the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them, and that he has brought you near him and all your brethren, the sons of Levi, with you? And would you seek the priesthood also? Therefore it is against the Lord that you and all your company have gathered together. What is Aaron that you murmur against him?" And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and they said, "We will not come up. It is a small thing that you have brought us up out of the land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you must also make yourself a prince over us. Moreover, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us inheritance of fields and vineyards. Will you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up." And Moses was very angry and said to the Lord, "Do not respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, and I have not harmed one of them." And Moses said to Korah, "Be present, you and all your company, before the Lord, you and they and Aaron tomorrow, and let every one of you take his censer and put incense upon it, and every one of you bring forth to the Lord his censer, 250 censers. You also and Aaron each his censer." So every man took his censer, and they put fire in them and laid incense upon them. And they stood at the entrance of the tent of meeting with Moses and Aaron. Then Korah assembled all the congregation against them at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation. And the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron, "Separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment." And they fell on their faces and said, "O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and will you be angry with all the congregation?" And the Lord said to Moses, "Say to the congregation, get away from the dwelling of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram." Then Moses rose and went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he said to the congregation, "Depart, I beg you, from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing of theirs, lest it be swept away with all their sins." So they got away from about the dwelling of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. And Dathan and Abiram came out and stood at the door of the tents, together with their wives, their sons, and their little ones. And Moses said, "Hereby you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, and that it has not been of my own accord. If these men die the common death of all men, or if they are visited by the fate of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates something new, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into Sheol, then you shall know that these men have despised the Lord." And as he finished speaking all these words, the ground under them split asunder, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up, and with their households, and all the men that stood to Korah, and all their goods. So they and all that belonged to them went down alive into Sheol, and the earth closed over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. And all Israel that were round about them fled at their cry, for they said, "Lest the earth swallow us up." And fire came forth from the Lord and consumed the 250 men offering the incense. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell Eleazar the son of Aaron, the priest, to take up the censers out of the blaze, then scatter the fire far and wide, for they are holy, the censers of these men who have sinned at the cost of their lives. So let them be made into hammered plates as a covering for the altar, for they offered them before the Lord, therefore they are holy, or therefore they are set apart. Thus they shall be assigned to the sons of Israel." So Eleazar the priest took the bronze censers, which those who were burned had offered, and they were hammered out as a covering for the altar, to be a reminder to the sons of Israel, so that no one who is not a priest, who is not of the descendants of Aaron, should draw near to burn incense before the Lord, lest he become as Korah and as his company, as the Lord said to Eleazar through Moses. Then a plague strikes another group of rebels. Let's jump ahead to chapter 17. And we get the story of the blossoming of Aaron's rod. Chapter 17. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the sons of Israel, and get from them rods, one for each father's house, from all their leaders according to the father's house, 12 rods, write each man's name upon his rod, and write Aaron's name upon the rod of Levi. For there shall be one rod for the head of each father's house. What's happening is, again, Aaron's priesthood is being challenged by the other tribes. And so God's giving the command, all right, the head of each tribe needs to give me a rod. And I want to see 12 rods placed in front of the Ark of the Covenant. I'm going to show you who I want to be a priest. So verse 4, then you shall deposit them, the rods, in the tent of meeting before the covenant, where I meet with you. And the rod of the man whom I choose shall sprout. Thus I will make to cease from me the murmurings of the sons of Israel, which they murmur against you. Moses spoke to the sons of Israel, and all their leaders gave him rods, one for each leader, according to their father's house, 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron was among their rods. And Moses deposited the rods before the Lord in the tent of meeting. And the next day Moses went into the tent of the covenant, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds and produced blossoms, and it bore ripe almonds. Then Moses brought all the rods from before the Lord to the sons of Israel, and they looked, and each man took his rod. And the Lord said to Moses, put back the rod of Aaron before the covenant, to be kept as a sign for the rebels, that you may make an end of their murmurings against me, lest they die. Thus did Moses as the Lord commanded him, so he did. So with the Ark of the Covenant, we have the Ten Commandments, a jar of the manna, and then Aaron's rod. These three artifacts, or three relics, were kept alongside with the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy of Holies. Yes, May.
How come Aaron's line are called the Levites instead of the Aaronites?
Because the tribes are the 12 sons of Jacob or Israel. And so Aaron is a descendant of Levi. He's of the tribe of Levi.
Yeah.
But then from that subset of Levi, you have the priests. And then from that another family or subset of Levi, you have those who move the ark and those who move the other tapestries and whatnot. In this story, Aaron's staff blossoms because he cares for the ark. And one note you should have is this is the reason why in religious art, whenever you see Saint Joseph, he has a rod and it's blossoming. And it's typically a lily. And some people say, like, oh, the lily is a sign of Joseph's purity. Like, yeah, I'm sure that's part of the consideration of the what's done in art, but it's because the ark is a type of Mary. It's a type for Mary. There's a lot of similarities between Mary and the Ark of the Covenant. So in art, because Joseph had the responsibility of caring for and protecting Mary, he's seen as like the successor to Aaron's role. So when he's depicted in art, he has a rod that's blossoming, and that's supposed to be Aaron's rod that he's holding. Verse 12. And the sons of Aaron said to Moses, behold, we perish, we are undone, we are all undone. Everyone who comes near, who comes near to the tabernacle of the Lord shall die. Are we all to perish? So, the challenging of authority is laid off for a little bit. Until we get to chapter 20. So jump to chapter 20. And the Israelites have been wandering around for a little bit, and they come to Meribah. Chapter 20, verse 1. And the sons of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month, and the people stayed at Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. Now there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. And the people contended with Moses and said, would that we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. Why have you brought the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness, that we should die here, both we and our cattle? And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is no place for grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink. Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tent of meeting, and fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord said to Moses, take the rod and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron your brother, and highlight, tell the rock. Tell the rock. Moses is supposed to speak to the rock. Tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them, and you shall give drink to the congregation and their cattle. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock. And he said to them, hear now, you rebels, shall we bring forth water for you out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his rod twice. And water came forth abundantly, and the congregation drank and their cattle. So Moses strikes the rock twice when he's not even supposed to be hitting the rock at all. He's supposed to just be speaking to it. So this is another example of Moses' anger issue, getting him in some hot water. In a desert, no pun intended. But there's also a rabbinic tradition that when Moses, so this is a Jewish tradition, this is like pre-Christian, when Moses hits the rock the first time, out flows blood, and then the second time he smacks it, then flows out the water. So make of it what you will, it's a Jewish tradition. But you could see some typology of Christ's sacrifice on the cross, and Jesus being the source of living waters, etc., etc. So water comes forth abundantly after he hits it twice, and the congregation drank and their cattle. Verse 12. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the sons of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. These are the waters of Meribah, where the sons of Israel contended with the Lord, and he showed himself holy among them. So you'll hear Meribah and Massah a lot in the Psalms as these instances where Israel challenged God in the wilderness. So Meribah is a very important event. This is the reason why Moses does not enter the promised land, because he does not listen to God. Now, at first glance, you might read that and think that's pretty harsh. After everything Moses has done and all the whining and horrible things all the other Israelites have done, Moses is now barred from entering the promised land because, he hit the rock twice instead of speaking to it. It's a fact that people in positions of authority bear greater moral responsibility than people who are not in positions of authority. All right, there's even people go as far as to have this expression that it's harder to get into heaven as a priest than it is as a lay person, because the responsibility, as a priest, the responsibility of a bishop is so sacred that the expectations and the demand of that office and your responsibility puts you in a position where you are more morally accountable for your actions than, say, like a 12-year-old, for example, to make the difference quite extreme. Okay. When you receive confirmation as a Catholic, right, you are more morally responsible and accountable for your actions because you have been confirmed in your faith and you're a soldier of Christ. So you have a greater responsibility now, to abide by the Ten Commandments, to live in charity, to love your neighbor as yourself and put God first. Everyone has those responsibilities, but the level of responsibility you take depends on the position that you have. So that's the moral, spiritual insight that you get from the story of Moses, and his failure, his mistake in the wilderness that then costs him his ability to enter the promised land. Going on to verse 22, we read about the death of Aaron. So Miriam's died. Now Aaron dies. So with the death of Aaron, that means his son now is stepping in as high priest. And we'll jump ahead to chapter 21 and the bronze serpent. which is referenced by Christ in the Gospels. So this might be one of the stories from Numbers that you might be more familiar with. When the Canaanite, the king of Arad, who dwelt in the Negev, heard that Israel was coming by the way of Atharim, he fought against Israel and took some of them captive. And Israel vowed a vow to the Lord and said, if you will indeed give this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. And the Lord listened to the voice of Israel and gave over the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities. So the name of the place was called Hormah. From Mount Hor, they set out by the way up to the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom, and the people became impatient on the way, and the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food and no water, and we loathe this worthless food, referring to the manna. Then the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, so that many of the sons of Israel died. And the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. So Moses prayed for the people, and the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it up as a sign, and everyone who is bitten when he sees it shall live. So Moses made a bronze serpent and set it up as a sign, and if a bronze serpent bit any man, he would look at the bronze serpent and live. So Jesus Christ himself draws the typology out for us when he's preaching to the Israelites, that the bronze serpent being elevated, all right, what is it? It's the symbol of death. This thing that is killing the people becomes their road to salvation. And likewise, Christ, when he's lifted up on the cross, all right, when Christ is beaten and disfigured and he's on the cross, sin and death is exactly what Christ came to conquer. And it's through the cross that, we're healed, we're given life and salvation. And so this episode of the bronze serpent is a typology, a foreshadowing of the salvation that's to come from Christ. Now, you might also, having read for the umpteenth time about the Israelites whining and moaning to Moses and Aaron, be thinking, what is wrong with these people? Okay, surely I would not be doing that if I was, seeing these miracles happen left and right. However, the reality is that, remember, the Exodus narrative and the wandering in the wilderness, it's all typological for the Christian life. Okay, what we do constantly in our own life is we sin, we screw up, and we complain. Everybody does that universally. So we're actually no better than the Hebrews in the wilderness when it comes to their rebellion, to their doubting of God. Okay, everyone goes through that, moments like that in their life. So this is all, like a microcosm of human existence, so to say. So if you think you're better than the Israelites in the wilderness, I would temper that with a reflection on, try to reflect on how you actually are similar to them. Chapter 22. We get to, I think, a very interesting story in the book of Numbers. And it's quite cool. There's not a ton of notes we're going to take about it, but we got to read through it and know what happens, because it does involve some prophecies that bear a lot of weight in salvation history. Yeah. So chapter 22, Balak summons Balaam. Then the sons of Israel set out and encamped in the plains of Moab beyond the Jordan at Jericho. And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. And Moab was in great dread of the people, because they were many. Moab was overcome with fear of the sons of Israel. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, this horde will now lick up all that is round about us, as the ox licks up the grass of the field. All right, the Moabites and the Midianites. Where do we know about the Moabites and the Midianites? Where do they come from? Caleb?
They come from their land in Paran.
What's that?
The ones that from Lot's line.
Yes, all right, so the Moabites are the descendants of Lot and his daughters. The Midianites are the descendants of Abraham and Keturah, Abraham's third wife. So these are like their long distant, cousins, so to speak. But they're now the enemies of Israel. So Balak, the son of Zippor, verse 4. So Balak, the son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at that time, verse 5, sent messengers to Balaam, the son of Beor, at Pethor, which is near the river. So Balaam's going to be an important character. And whenever you see the river referenced in Scripture, that's a reference to the Euphrates. And the Euphrates is like the border of the Fertile Crescent to the desert region. All right. So the prime real estate is from the Mediterranean Sea to the Euphrates. That is the land that is flowing with milk and honey. It's akin to Napa Valley, California. Excellent produce, excellent weather. That's where you want to live. It's prime real estate. In the land of Ammah, to call him, saying, "Behold, the people has come out of Egypt. They cover the face of the earth, and they are dwelling opposite me. Come now, curse this people for me, since they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them and drive them from the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed." So this is how you can build up your reputation as a prophet. In the ancient world, a pagan prophet. You can be really lucky with your predictions and forecasts. All right. Think if 1,000 guys are trying to be prophets, one of 1,000 guys statistically will have better success at predicting things or like doing incantations. So Balaam is one of these, affluent prophets who has success. He has a good reputation for whoever he curses, the curse seems to stick. The second possibility is that, like Balaam is pretty deep into the occult, so there's some demonic forces going on that he cooperates with that the pagans are respecting. All right, so they call for Balaam. Let's jump ahead to verse 21. Actually, no, let's not. Let's not jump ahead quite so far. Let's go back to verse 7. Okay, so we're just going to continue with the narrative. So the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the fees for divination in their hand. And they came to Balaam and gave him Balak's message. And he said to them, "Lodge here this night, and I will bring back word to you as Yahweh speaks to me." So really interesting part of the story is that Balaam is using the divine name. But he's a pagan prophet. So the princes of Moab stayed with Balaam. And God, notice, again, we get that distinction that we saw a couple examples of in Genesis. God comes to speak with Balaam. It's not Yahweh. He's outside the covenant. Right? So he does not have the right to call on God by name because he's not in that familial relationship with him. So verse 9, and God came to Balaam and said, "Who are these men with you?" And Balaam said to God, "Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent to me, saying, Behold, the people has come out of Egypt, and it covers the face of the earth. Now come, curse them for me. Perhaps I shall be able to fight against them and drive them out." God said to Balaam, "You shall not go out with them. You shall not curse the people, for they are blessed." So Balaam rose in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, "Go to your own land, for Yahweh has refused to let me go with you." So the princes of Moab rose and went to Balak and said, "Balaam refuses to come with us." Once again, Balak sent princes, more in number and more honorable than they. And they came to Balaam and said to him, "Thus says Balak, the son of Zippor, let nothing hinder you from coming to me, for I will surely do you great honor. And whatever you say to me, I will do. Come curse this people for me." But Balaam answered and said to the servants of Balak, "Though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the command of Yahweh my God, to do less or more. Please now tarry here this night, also, that I may know what more the Lord will say to me. And God came to Balaam at night and said to him, if the men have come to call you, rise, go with them, but only what I bid you, that you shall do. So God's going to use Balaam. God can use whoever he wants to exercise his will. Just don't get confused thinking that Balaam is some kind of good character because, he's dropped the divine name and, feigning like he actually cares about Yahweh. He is a pagan prophet, and later on in Numbers, you'll see he actually does try to lead Israel into idolatry. Verse 21. So Balaam rose in the morning and saddled his donkey and went with the princes of Moab. But God's anger was kindled because he went. And the angel of the Lord took his stand in the way of his adversary. Now he was riding on the donkey, and his 2 servants were with him. And the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, and the donkey turned aside out of the road and went into the field. And Balaam struck the donkey to turn her into the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in the narrow path between the vineyards, with the wall on either side. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she pushed against the wall and pressed Balaam's foot against the wall. So he struck her again. Then the angel of the Lord went ahead and stood in a narrow place, where there was no way to turn either to the right or to the left. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, she lay down under Balaam, and Balaam's anger was kindled, and he struck the donkey with his staff. Then Yahweh opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, what have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 times? So I think this is the first and only time in the Bible where an animal talks. Well, maybe you want to count the serpent back in Genesis. But so Balaam's ass speaks back to him after getting a beating. Verse 20, and Balaam said to the donkey, because you have made sport of me, I wish I had a sword in my hand, for then I would kill you. And the donkey said to Balaam, am I not your donkey, upon which you have ridden all your life long to this day? Was I ever accustomed to do so to you? And he said, no. Then the Lord opened the eyes of Balaam, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand, and he bowed his head and fell on his face. And the angel of the Lord said to him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come forth to withstand you, because your way is perverse before me. And the donkey saw me and turned aside before me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, surely just now I would have slain you and let her live. Then Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, for I did not know that you stood in the road against me. Now therefore, if it is evil in your sight, I will go back again. And the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, go with the men, but only the word which I bid you, that you shall speak. So Balaam went on with the princes of Balak. When Balak heard that Balaam had come down, he went out to meet him in the city of Moab on the boundary formed by the Arnon at the extremity of the boundary. And Balak said to Balaam, did I not send to you to call you? Why did you not come to me? Am I not able to honor you? Balaam said to Balak, behold, I have come to you. Have I now any power at all to speak anything? The word that God puts in my mouth, that I must speak. Then Balaam went with Balak, and they came to Kirath Huzoth. And Balak sacrificed oxen and sheep and sent to Balaam and to the princes who were with him. So Balak, he's a pagan king. Pagan kings, they're not only warriors, but they also act as the priests for their nations. So he's offering up these sacrifices because Balak is a pagan. He doesn't understand sacrifice. He wants to feed a hungry God. So he's trying to feed some hungry God so that the word that goes into Balaam's mouth is going to be favorable and that he can curse the Israelites. Verse 41, Balaam's first oracle. And the next day Balak took Balaam and brought him up to Bamoth Baal, and from there he saw the nearest of the people. And Balaam said to Balak, build for me here 7 altars, and provide for me here 7 bulls and 7 rams. Balak did as Balaam had said, and Balak and Balaam offered on each altar a bull and a ram. And Balaam said to Balak, stand beside your burnt offering, and I will go. Perhaps the Lord will come to meet me, and whatever he shows me, I will tell you. and he went to a bare height. So this is also very common for the pagans. They're in hill country. The borders are like natural mountains. And he goes to the top of a bare hill. So when you're a pagan, you want to get as close as you can to the gods because the gods live in the sky. So like his powers of communication and his mindset is going to be best where he has the best reception. He's going to be on top of the hill. Verse 4, and God met Balaam, and Balaam said to him, I have offered the 7 altars, and I have offered upon each altar a bull and a ram. And the Lord put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, return to Balak, and thus you shall speak. And he returned to him, behold, he and all the princes of Moab were standing beside this burnt offering. And Balaam took up his discourse and said, from Aram, Balak has brought me, the king of Moab, from the eastern mountains. Come, curse Jacob for me, and come, denounce Israel. How can I curse whom God has not cursed? How can I denounce whom the Lord has not denounced? For the top of the mountains I see him, from the hills I behold him. Behold, a people dwelling alone, and not reckoning itself among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob, or number the 4th part of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my end be like his. All right, so all this prophecy, you have examples of synonymous parallelism. All right, notice he's saying the same thing back-to-back lines. Who can number the dust of Israel? Who can measure a 4th from him? You're saying the same thing. They're just too big to count. So Balak, he's putting down a hefty investment in this well-to-do prophet to come curse the Israelites. And when he returns and that's what he hears, he's quite upset. And Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? I took you to curse my enemies, and behold, you have done nothing but bless them. And he answered, must I not take heed to speak what the Lord puts in my mouth? And Balak said to him, come with me to another place from which you may see them. You may see only the nearest of them and not see them all. Then curse them for me from there. And he took him to the field of Zophim, to the top of Pisgah, and built 7 altars and offered a bull and a ram on each altar. Balaam said to Balak, stand here beside your burnt offering while I meet the Lord yonder. And the Lord met Balaam and put a word in his mouth and said, return to Balak, and thus you shall say. And he came to him, behold, he was standing beside his burnt offering, and the princes of Moab with him. And Balak said to him, what has the Lord spoken? And Balaam took up his discourse and said, rise, Balak, and hear. Hearken to me, O son of Zippor. God is not man that he should lie, or a son of man that he should repent. Has he said, and will he not do it? Or has he spoken, and will he not fulfill it? Behold, I receive a command to bless. He is blessed, and I cannot revoke it. He has not beheld misfortune in Jacob, nor has he seen trouble in Israel. The Lord, their God, is with them, and the shout of a king is among them. Very important verse to underline, highlight. God is their king. All right, this is synonymous parallelism. Who is the king of Israel? God is the king of Israel. In this covenantal structure, Israel has no king, and that is the ideal because, well, they do have a king. It's God. So God is the first king of Israel. God is the Lord of creation, so on and so forth. That's going to be really important for you to know for, the rest of your life, but also for the test. Verse 22, God brings them out of Egypt. They have, as it were, the horns of the wild ox, for there's no enchantment against Jacob, no divination against Israel. Now it shall be said of Jacob and Israel, what has God wrought? Behold the people. As a lioness it rises up, and as a lion it lifts itself. It does not lie down till it devours the prey and drinks the blood of the slain. This will become more explicit in the 3rd oracle, but if you remember, Judah, the tribe of Judah, is referred to as a lion's whelp. So the imagery of a lion is an association with the tribe of Judah.